Hello, YouTube viewers. Welcome to my show, Future Friday. In today's episode, we're gonna upgrade our series of spacesuit, and today we're gonna talk about Astronaut Propulsion Unit. So let's dive right into it. Well, first you have to understand, once you are outside of quote unquote your spaceship or quote unquote your space station, you need mobility. You need the ability to move around. Now, biggest problem is that in space you do not have to you do not have anything to push against. It's not like there is an atmosphere that you can wave against or land to walk on. So you have nothing. So the only way you can move is using propulsion. Basically, you have to throw something in order to get pushed back. Action equals reaction. So that is the first inherent limitation. On top of that, orientation is also very critical in space, because you may think this astronaut is up or tilted, but again, how does the astronaut know whether he's up or tilted? Because there is no, the reason we can tell up from down is that we have air. In air there is a fluid. The fluid is moving on top of a hairs. Because of gravity, it moves. Now once you are in 0G, that's not happening. So your ear is not sending any command. It's like, dude, that is down, that is up. You do not have that. So these astronauts do not know whether it's up or down. So orientation also becomes a very awkward kind of situation. Now, we used to solve all these kind of issues using tethers. However, tethers are commercial. So this is a photograph that you will see a lot of. This is around before Apollo project, basically Gemini, Mercury and Gemini kind of project. So the reality was they had simply the suit was basically upgraded high altitude suit, which was used for fighter pilots, and they simply fed oxygens and whatever they needed to feed, they directly fed it through basically umbilical cord. Now this was used for till 1980s. This was used umbilical cord. So then came the space shuttle era, and a collaboration between Russia and America. And during that era, everything got upgraded. Now the first gift that you got from that upgrade was Extravehicular Mobility Unit. Now, if you think about spacesuit is just there as a passive component. It does not do anything. It just protects you. It's like an armor. However, problem is that if you only have spacesuit, like quote unquote suit, like Starman in SpaceX Falcon Heavy launch, you could see the dummy was wearing the spacesuit. If you are doing that, you will be dead, simply because it did not had any add-ons. Now you need add-ons. Like whenever you see a spacesuit, something like that. Now suit is one component. Then you see a giant backpack. Now that backpack is what we call Extravehicular Mobility Unit. That allows you to support the suit. Basically, that allows you to do things. Basically, it basically supplies oxygen, removes carbon dioxide, does the thermal management. So these are the two core components of quote unquote Extravehicular Mobility Unit. Basically, without it, if you only have spacesuit, you have to have an umbilical that is providing your oxygen, removing your CO2 and all that. So you can understand it's flat out limited. It's only there in case of momentary exposure to space or vacuum. It's not going to protect you. It's definitely not going to allow you to go outside of a spaceship to repair it. That's not going to happen. So in Extravehicular Mobility Unit, these limitations are removed, because you have a backpack that has a, depending on design, generally they are built in such a way that they can support the astronaut for minimum of 8 hours. And in case of primary system failures, let's say main component failures, breakdowns or anything like that, it should provide 30 minutes of emergency backups. So the first thing they have to make sure is oxygen supply, because human consumes a lot of oxygen. In basically, if I describe in liters, it's a very large number. It's like around 800 liters to 500 liters. But in terms of kilogram, we consume around 1 kilogram or less in a day. So you must supply oxygen. That's the first thing. And you must remove CO2. Now CO2 is a very tricky thing, because you have to understand that even though CO2 is quote unquote not poisonous, and even though you could have a lot of oxygen in your atmosphere, only a little amount of carbon dioxide can shut down our biological system. Basically, if you go around 10% carbon dioxide in an atmosphere, it starts to become dangerous. But the moment you reach basically 12 and 13, you dead. So you have to understand, our body cannot handle high concentrations of CO2. So you must remove it. Do whatever you have to do, but you must do something with it. On top of that, thermal management becomes the next issue, the next thing that's going to kill you, because this suit, quote unquote space suit, is just a insulator. It's the best insulator we could make. Now this insulator, problem is that human body is a metabolizing engine. It metabolizes, it produces heat. Now if you're not doing anything, if you're just chilling out, you're producing around 100 watts of heat, bare minimum. Like no matter what you do, your heart rate, your sweating system, everything is producing around 100 watts of heat. Once you are exercising or doing something, like let's say you're trying to remove a bolt or removing a piece, servicing your equipment, you are producing as high as 500 watts of heat. So your suit will basically cook you from inside using your own heat. So the system, the backpack unit, must have the ability to remove that heat. So all of these must also be controllable using the spacesuit itself. They cannot be like, okay, mission control change our like O2 level, or mission control change our like temperature or volume or things of that type, because this also have communication systems. So that is why you see something this giant on the front end of it. Now you can see like many times you will see in spacewalk, astronauts have a giant mirror here. Now again, it's not prevalent in every mission, but you can see in especially the old ones, the mirror was there, so they can directly see what's happening, and these basically gizmos will tell them like, okay, what is your volume level. So let's say you think you need to speak clearly, loudly, or things of that nature, you can change the knobs here. And now again, how much oxygen you have, how much cooling system you have, basically everything, push to talk, and all that is generally done, and the buttons, knobs specifically built in such a way that, so that they can be used in clunky mode. Basically astronaut suits are gloves are very big and blunky, so you cannot have touch types. So these are built in such a way, like big clunky objects. Now nowadays they have a heads-up display and all that. So all these things allow you to have what we call extravehicular mobility unit. Basically this will allow you to survive outside of space station, outside of a spacecraft. Now okay, now you are outside but you cannot move. Okay, you can survive but you cannot move, so you are basically useless. So how do we make useless to useful? Is basically we add astronaut propulsion unit. Now astronaut propulsion unit is simple way of saying space jet, basically jetpack. Now people have tried multiple things to make quote unquote jetpack. The best option that we have right now is nitrogen. Most of the jetpacks that you see are generally running on nitrogen. They have pressurized nitrogen, and they just release this through multiple nozzles that are placed throughout the system. The reason we use nitrogen is that let's say you have a spacesuit that is doing this thrusters and all that, and you are doing it around ISS. Let's say your exhaust hits the solar panel, it should not damage it. So that is why parasites are generally not used, even though they have more power. And you have to have the ability to contain it in case this breaks or something bad happens. You must have the ability, because if parasite leaks inside the space station, yeah, people are dead. So that is why we generally use nitrogen. On top of that, it allows you to remove the tether. Now tether was removed for spacesuit long ago, because once we started to add that backpack, we got the ability to power the system independently. However, the tether is still there for safety reasons. So this allows you to do untethered work. So space shuttle was there. Space shuttle is the first time this sort of system was used in large scale. So let's say you have to go to the other side. A robotic arm was not long enough to send you to the other side. So you had to use something like this. However, you have to understand that it does allow you to remove tethers, but it is very, very risky. NASA does not like to use this, and flat out if you check the mission directorate around this, these are classified as emergency systems. They are not something that you're supposed to use it, because again, one bad move, one bad stuck valve, you will be like thrown out in space. So it is kind of a last resort right now. And just to make sure, let's say that happens for some reason, let's say robotic arm malfunctions and you get stuck or you get thrown out, like how it happened in Gravity. So all the space suits that you see in ISS, generally they have a small unit, something like this. Now this is an emergency return to home kind of kit. It's still a propulsion unit. It's just instead of having, let's say, 20 kilograms of nitrogen, it barely has like 2 to 3 kilograms of nitrogen. So it's only there, the only job it is there in case astronaut starts to spin uncontrollably. This will fire the thrusters to correct it, and then it will give astronaut like control to fire it wherever you need to go. Again, it does not have too much power, does not have enough delta V, but it's more than enough that in case of an emergency, it should allow astronaut to be recovered. So these are the propulsion unit that we use. Now, if you are using it, what is the problem with that? Well, they only have few hours of range. When we say kilogram, you may think, okay, 20 kilograms and all that. You have to understand that that's in a space station, so you do not have like the luxury of condensing the atmosphere. You're gonna run out of it. So you may think, okay, 8 hours is long enough. Here's the that's one go. Then you have to land to Earth. That is why it was used so much in a space shuttle, because every time space shuttle will come back, the suit will be back. You're gonna refuel it, refurbish it, and all that, and then you send it back. But let's say you put this in ISS, it's only one use item. So that is a very critical limitation, that it only allows you to use it for 4 hours, as in 4 to 8 hours is the range. And in terms of how far can you go and safely, reliably return, it's not that much. So even the delta V on best case scenario is not too high. All those aside, let's say that still makes it a useful tool, but the biggest hurdle, like the thing that will affect you the most is that it's big, it's heavy, and it's clunky. Like this was a smaller unit, but it was more powerful because it was using peroxide. Now most people speculate this system was specifically designed to allow astronauts from space shuttle to go to another satellite. Basically they can let's say go to a Russia's satellite and inspect it or sabotage it, whatever have you. But this was rejected very early on because again peroxide, and again it did not serve any purpose. So these are the limitation with this. Like flat out right now you have to design an airlock that is big enough that the whole human can go through it. This system, this was a Russian system. You can see like how big it is. Now again 300-400 kilo, you may think that's not an issue in 0G, but still an issue when you are moving around, because you have to move, you have to slow down a 300 kilogram object. So this is the problem with it. That is why it's generally used as a last resort. Like if there is a place in space station that no Canadarm cannot reach, or no tether can go there, no grapples are there, then people will use this. And again there will be one backup on top of another backup to make sure nothing bad happens. So there are certain very severe limitations with this current implementation. So how can we solve this? Well, physics is very simple on this. Power is the key. If you have the power, you can do everything. To give you a context of it, basically human only consumes 1 kilogram, not liters, kilogram of oxygen every day. Basically 24-hour use case, you are only consuming 1 kilogram. Now that is so little. If you have enough power that you can extract that much basically oxygen out of water, less than 2 liters of water, that's it. You do not have to compress anything, because you have to, whenever somebody is talking about, let's say scuba tanks are actually easy because they are underwater and they're getting pressurized by the water. But when you're taking a tank that's supposed to be exposed to a vacuum of the atmosphere, it has to handle that high pressure of oxygen. Otherwise you have to liquefy it. Liquefying is not practical, so they generally use high pressure. So the tank becomes very big and heavy and bulky. Liquid water, you can have it in a polythene bag, nothing nothing fancy about it. Now why only 2 liters? Actually you need more or less around 1.8 liters, because you have to understand, even though there is 2 hydrogen per oxygen, hydrogen is very light. It's like lightest element on the periodic table, so it's like 18:1 in terms of mass ratio. So you don't need too much water. Let's say you only have 2-3 liters of water, you're set for few days. Basically that's how much oxygen liters of water has that. How can we extract that? Physics is simple. Electrolysis. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated, requiring magical things or fuel cells or all that. It's very simple. Now problem then you will have is that, okay, you extracted the oxygen, astronaut used the oxygen is now being converted into carbon dioxide, you're scrubbing it out. What the heck you're gonna do with hydrogen? Because it is a flammable gas and you have oxygen, active oxygens around, so you can use it as the thruster. Rather than using nitrogen, you can use hydrogen, and you have to take the hydrogen, pressurize it and heat it up too, so you can get high enough thrust. Because if hydrogen does have the advantage of being light, so if you can heat it up, let's say to 800 degrees Celsius using a heater or something like that, you heat it up that much, it's gonna become a very effective jet. So you, instead of running out of nitrogen, you're gonna be like, okay, just fill it up with water, and it's like you have a spacesuit. So not only you're getting oxygen that you need to breathe, you're also getting hydrogen to push. So 2-in-1, and it also has a thermal benefits and all that. Or in case of emergency, you can directly retroheat it, basically make water into steam, and that as a thruster. So you will have a lot of what you call thrust. So if you need for some reason emergency boost, this can provide that. So that's it. Water can do all that. The only problem is that you need a power source that is powerful enough to do this. Right now we do not have anything even approaching this kind of energy efficiency. So water is the best solution. So what is the option? That what can we do in terms of being limited by the physics that we have? Well, we have to take beta voltaic, basically atomic batteries, to a whole new level. So think of this way, beta voltaic right now, the research on this is very limited. First of all, because not everybody gets licensed to experiment with radioactive stuff. So that itself is limited. So right now the stuff that we are talking about, the atomic batteries, we do have atomic. They are only powerful enough to run your pacemaker. So that's not enough for electrolyzing the water. But let's say somebody figures out how to extract enough efficiency, like high efficiency beta voltage, because inherently on a physical level it does have the energy. It's just we are not converting it efficiently. It's like having an incandescent light bulb. So it's like in that state. So physics is there, material is there, energy is there. If we can extract it with high enough efficiencies, same way we do with LEDs, if we can do that, then we can have that. Like, so all your space, giant blunky things will become very small. So power is the key. If we can figure out beta voltaics, or who knows, gamma voltaics, then we have kilowatts of power on your backpack. So if we have that, then it's like every problem is solved. So what it will allow us to do in the future. Now this is one aspect that I laughed in The Martian. The Martian has this spacesuit. Now it looks functional and practical. Can it be done? Absolutely. We have the technology to do this. Here's the deal. He's outside of the basically habitat or outside of his van, that rover, most of the time. Now here's the deal. He has a very small backpack in his bag that is providing his oxygen. I'm like, dude, unless you have some magical tank that can handle 50,000 liters of oxygen in that tank, like it has to be made out of carbon nanotube or something like that, you simply do not have anything that can provide basically oxygen for a adult human to be moving around flat out. Basically 20-30 minute life support you will get on the size of the backpack he has. You need a proof for that. Just look into the backpack size of Apollo astronauts. Like, it was huge. This puppy is like, yeah, it's just tiny backpack. I'm like, no, you did. So again, if you have the energy, then then you can solve this issue again. But if he had energy, he wouldn't have that issue. So again, that was a movie, so I can understand that. But if you want to make something even more powerful, let's say this is from a TV show, Expanse. I loved it. And the Martian spacesuit, basically it's Iron Man 2.0. Again, does not have the magical abilities, but it's like that. Can we do that? Yes, absolutely. If you have the power, you can have a scenario where just a few liters of water, not even 10 whole liters, is more than enough to allow you to do everything except how to take care of your poop. That is, we do not have any way to solve that. Urine can be extracted into drinkable water without too much issue, but we can't do anything with the poop yet. So in the future, if we have more power, we can make very practical smaller suits that are not gonna be big, cumbersome or things of that nature. So this was my presentation about space propulsion, basically space suit propulsion. I hope you liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I would urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me your next respondent, and please leave a comment because I reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.